that. And
Definitely.
okay, fantastic. Um, this is a new topic for me to talk about, and it came about, I mentioned it to Miranda and Carolyn McVicker with the Office of Wellness and Work Life, because when this occurred for me, I found that there wasn't a lot of information out there. And so I started doing some investigation, because for me, this was almost 6-year process. And so I found that there's not a lot of information out there about navigating perimenopause and then ultimately reaching menopause. And so I wanted to talk about it. And I mentioned to Miranda earlier today that I'd love to revisit the topic again in the future, and then talk with some of the gynecologists that we have on campus, and bring some more information. So what I'm sharing with you today is my personal story, and then a little bit about my professional life, kind of how I help women in this stage of life professionally. And I'll discuss that towards the end of the presentation. But I hope this is helpful to you. Please submit questions in the chat. Again, I'll try to navigate that, and then take a look towards the end to see what questions we have. But I really wanted this to be a conversation as if we're all at a very large table, having lunch together, and kind of learning about this stage of life, again, that no one talks about. Because the years leading up to menopause, it's a major life change. And I think that, at least I personally found, that we talk about puberty, you talk about puberty with your daughter, or, your mother or whomever was in your life talked with you about that. We discuss fertility issues and infertility. We talk about pregnancy, but we don't talk about this stage of life. And it is a major life change that's occurring physically, but is having effects that are rolling into to the rest of your life. So I'll get into that briefly, but just to kind of introduce who I am on campus to those who don't know me. My name is Suzanne Henson, and I am the dietitian at University Medical Center. I see patients who are patients of University Medical Center. I also see patients in the community, and also work with UA faculty staff. So that is what I do professionally. In addition, I'm on faculty in the School of Medicine, and work with medical students from UAB, as well as the individuals who are the physicians who are in our family medicine residency. So professionally, healthcare is my business. And when this all began for me, I thought, this is the first time in my life I don't have answers. And so again, I began doing some investigation, and we'll kind of hope take you through kind of my personal journey, which I hope helps you. And because again, it was a situation where for the first time in my life, I felt like I was not in control of my own health. Now here is just a visual. I took this photo a few years ago, and I showed this photo to a colleague, and this has been pre-COVID. So I think it was 2019. I took this photo of my bedside table, and I said, oh my gosh, this is where I've gotten to. I have my humidifier. I have my essential oils diffusing. I even threw in a salt lamp in the hopes that it would bring me the ability to sleep again, because the insomnia, I'm frequently asked by friends who are right around my age, and I'll be 51 actually next week. But they said, how did you know that things were changing? And I said, well, I started having the night sweats, and I started having hot flashes during the day, to the point that I had fans everywhere in my house. There's even a fan beside where I put on my makeup in the morning. And but the inability to sleep was something that was brand new for me. I could go to sleep, but I would wake up between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I would be up for an hour to 2 hours. And so I took this photo one morning, and I think it just kind of shows everything that I was trying to do at that point in my life to be able to sleep. And I think it's a visual that kind of says, this is how desperate I was to be able to sleep. And I've laughed because since I look back at this photo, fortunately now that I'm on the other side of this journey, I can sleep and I sleep really well. But it was just that period of when I couldn't, that it just kind of was like a first alarm of what is happening in my life. Okay. Now, when we talk about menopause, it's really not menopause we're talking about. It's more perimenopause, which are the years leading up to menopause. Okay. And so many of the symptoms that women complain about actually occur during perimenopause. And that can last anywhere from a couple of years to up to 10 years. For most women, and this is according to Cleveland Clinic, the average length of perimenopause is right around 4 years. As I said earlier, for me, it's closer to 6 years. It started not long before I turned 45, was when I started noticing the, again, inability to sleep, the hot flashes during the day, the night sweats started, and I can kind of trace that back to about 6 years, starting right around kind of late age 44 or so. But when menopause occurs, that means that a woman has gone 12 months without having a period. Okay. So at that 1 year mark, a woman is considered postmenopausal. And for me personally, a year ago, when I met with my doctor, who fortunately is very open to conversations about this phase of a woman's life, and so I had ongoing discussions with her. I remember telling her a year ago when lab work came back that said, okay, you're fully in menopause. I told her, I'm going to go out and buy a steak dinner. I'm so happy that this is over because it was a very long, almost 6-year journey. Okay. But perimenopause, again, is that phase in which most of the symptoms that we attribute to menopause are actually occurring. And that happens when the ovaries start to produce fewer hormones. So estrogen is starting to go down, which also affects the hormone progesterone. And as that hormone progesterone gets off balance, that's when you start to see issues such as the inability to sleep. Progesterone is kind of a calming hormone. It helps you to sleep better. So as that gets off balance, that's when the insomnia begins to occur. And that's frequently what I'll have my patients complain about, is that they no longer can sleep. And so they're noticing that something's a problem. Okay. Okay. And great question. I'm going to go into the chat right now. Have a question for women who are on birth control. How would they know they're entering perimenopause? And that's a wonderful question. And for me, I can tell you that I have had that conversation with my doctor, and she told me that we really can't judge whether you are or not in perimenopause until you come off birth control, until you come off. I was on an oral contraceptive, and so I had to come off of that and wait about 6 weeks to get hormones tested to see if I was indeed in perimenopause. So I would encourage you to have a conversation with your physician about that. The downside is that if you come off an oral contraceptive or any contraceptive method, you need a backup birth control. And again, I'm speaking as a woman, not as the individual who's the dietitian at University Medical Center, but as a woman who went through this. But I did have to come off oral contraceptives and then get lab work tested to see if I was in perimenopause. But again, have that conversation with your physician. Okay. I went for a good bit of time knowing that something was off. Again, couldn't sleep, having the night sweats, the hot flashes. And if you haven't had those yet, and every woman's experience is different, just like puberty is different. Pregnancy, if you've had a pregnancy, that's different for every woman. This phase of life is as well. For me personally, I've never had a child, so I wasn't accustomed to hormonal changes. Puberty I breezed through it with no problems. But this phase really hit me, and the night sweats were to the degree that I was soaking the sheets. I was investing in invested in a cooling mattress, invested in cooling sheets, just trying to think of, to find some solutions to the night sweats and trying to be able to sleep a little bit better, as I showed you in the previous photo. But again, I talk about it because when all this was happening for me, I couldn't find any answers. And I'll discuss it in just a little bit. I later learned from, with friends who are going through similar issues, there are some dangerous situations that you can get into if you don't go to a provider who knows how to regulate hormones correctly. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit. Okay. Now is definitely the time that you want to have a conversation and be seeing your doctor regularly, to get lab work, not just the hormones, but also be looking for other things. For myself, I remember the day I was sitting at my desk here in the College of Community Health Sciences, and I was working in the Student Health Center at the time. And I remember vividly the day that I could look down and feel that my abdomen, that my midsection had gotten larger. And it just happened all of a sudden. It seemed to anyway. And I remembered back when I was in my early 30s, I was working at UAB and working in a weight management and wellness program. And I was 30 to 35 in that role. And I remember women who were between ages about 45 to 60 would say to me, all of a sudden I have this abdomen. And I remembered that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what they were talking about. And that occurred for me. It just one day, I remember it happening, that it became apparent that I had gained weight in my midsection. And that is due to that drop in estrogen. And at the time, I told my patients, oh, you just need to exercise more, or you need to make changes to your diet. And I laugh with my patients today that are the same age that I am. And I say, literally the forces of the universe made me pay for what I said to those women when I was 30 years old, because I didn't realize that that was a real thing. And weight gain in the abdomen is common. Several years ago, as I was in this process, I remember throwing out all of my belts. I was like, obviously I can't wear belts anymore. And I discovered that tunics and clothes that kind of went over my abdomen were better, or a better fit for me. That since subsided a little bit since this is all kind of ended, but now is definitely the time to talk to your doctor about getting lab work. Not again just hormones, but also other things can change during this time period. Definitely want to get your cholesterol checked, get that full lipid panel. Thyroid, it's not uncommon for thyroid issues to crop up during this period. At least that was the case for me. And I've discussed that with my physician, that's not uncommon during this phase of a woman's life. So getting that lab work done, also getting your vital signs checked regularly. We know that heart issues, cardiovascular issues increase once a woman hits menopause and thereafter. Most people don't realize that heart disease is the leading killer of women. And it's during this age range that you really want to be on top of knowing where your vital signs are, your blood pressure, heart rate, et cetera, and seeing a doctor regularly, whether that's every 6 months, maybe every 3 months, depending on any medications you're on. But now is the time to monitor all that. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so what are some symptoms? Okay, well, I've mentioned hot flashes, mentioned insomnia, but what are some other things? Again, that weight gain in the abdomen is not uncommon, and I no longer, as a professional, dismiss when I have a patient who comes to me and says, all of a sudden I'm gaining weight in my midsection and I don't know what's happening. And I encourage them that is common. And there are things that we can do, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, to address it. But one thing, I have a coworker who said, I'm just having body image issues because my body doesn't look like it once did. And giving yourself some grace and saying, this is just another phase of life. We recognize that in puberty, and if you remember back to those years, you started gaining weight in your hips, for example. Well, the weight gain that occurs in the abdomen is common. And again, it can start to subside, and there's some things that we can do. Okay. Also, hair loss. And again, that's where getting that thyroid checked. Hair loss can occur as those hormones are changing, or if they're thyroid issues. So having that conversation with your doctor. Again, the night sweats, for me personally, it was truly the sheets, my pajamas, everything was soaking wet to where I'd have to change in the middle of the night. And so that obviously made sleep even more difficult. Okay. Heart palpitations. I found myself having what I would call almost a panic attack. And it was just all of a sudden my heart would race and I couldn't understand what was happening. And that is not uncommon. Also, headaches can be more frequent. And I'm going to jump into the chat and the Q&A here for a second. Great question. Is there anything you can do about it once you have hair loss? Again, definitely talk with your doctor, see about getting that thyroid checked. TSH is the lab value, and they may want to even do a further breakdown of the thyroid to see kind of where you are. But once you've had hair loss, if you can address it and see if thyroid is an issue, again, those hormonal changes can be part of it. The hair loss should subside, but you definitely want to get answers on that. There's also a question, can the menopausal hormone change cause cholesterol to be elevated? Yes, absolutely. And again, for women, heart disease is the leading killer of women. And so being on top of any heart issues, particularly as this period of your life starts, is critical. I know for me personally, and I've shared this story in other venues, but I mean, I'm a dietitian. My meals are planned out. I get all the fruits and vegetables, but I know that I have a strong family history of heart disease. Every woman on my mother's side of the family, every woman has some type of heart issue, whether it's elevated blood pressure or to the point of high blood pressure, hypertension, elevated cholesterol. I personally deal with blood pressure issues and high triglycerides, which are the fats in the bloodstream. And that's despite having a great diet. I just have a strong genetic predisposition to having heart issues, and then hitting this stage of my life really kind of sent that up. So, see your doctor, get tested, know those vital signs. For me, it was age 40 was when I started on blood pressure medication. And I had really high blood pressure at that time. I have since, within the past year, have come off of all but one blood pressure medication. And again, I think that's because I hit menopause last year and also was finally able to lose some weight. And so that meant that I didn't need the medications that I did at one point in time. Now I'm going to jump back into the Q&A. Okay. Great question. Will migraines and headaches get better, have them less often after perimenopause? As those hormonal changes start to subside, they should. But again, don't negate the fact that headaches can be related to a couple of other factors. You want to know that where that blood pressure is running, because very high blood pressure, and blood pressure, unfortunately, is the thing. It's the condition that you don't know is happening until it gets really high. But if blood pressure is greatly elevated, then you can have headaches. So you want to know where those numbers are running. Okay. So definitely get tested. I can't tell you how many patients I see that have not been to a primary care doctor in years because they just didn't think they needed it. So you definitely want to know where your blood pressure is running. Miranda, do you mind, on that particular point, do you mind chiming in on where Wellness and Work Life has blood pressure medications or blood pressure machines around the campus, if you don't mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have two different blood pressure machines. We have one at the Employee Resource Center, which is out on the University Services campus. And then there's one at the Student Center on campus. It's right after you pass Starbucks. So like right when you're going in the staircase, it's right there. You can create an account in there. You can use your CWID and create a password. And so when each time you log on, you can see your history. And it'll also do your weight, so you can follow your BMI if you wanted to. And I dropped that in the chat too.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, definitely. I mean, knowing blood pressure again, though those numbers just start to go up as we get older, and knowing where you are. I mean, I was shocked when I was just at a routine doctor's visit, and mine was so high that my doctor at that time wouldn't let me leave her office until she got it down. So that's been a really a learning experience for me, because again, I work in healthcare. I thought I was doing all the right things, but that hereditary factor is just one that I can't override. And so I have to really watch it. Okay. And I hope, Susan, that addresses your message or your question about hereditary, your genes dictate a lot about your health, and you need to know, if you do have the ability to know, what is playing in the background in terms of your genetic makeup, and what you can, and then what you need to really be on top of going forward. Okay. And then I'm going back into the chat as opposed to the Q&A. Have a question. My doctor will not listen to me. I'm 56 and having all sorts of issues, and I'm postmenopausal going on 7 years, changing doctors. If anyone has a doctor they can recommend that would listen to me, I think definitely, if you don't feel you're being heard, making a change is important. It's critical, actually. So, and I will respond to this offsite to this particular question. But I'm happy to do that, because you need to be able to have a conversation with your doctor. And fortunately, my doctor is one that we had a conversation at one point. I remember telling her about the fatigue that I had. And one spring break, I remember I left the house, I think twice the entire spring break. And she asked me, she said, is going to the grocery store like an event for you? And I said, yes, I'm that fatigued. And so fortunately, I was able to have a dialogue with my doctor, but I'm happy to answer that question offsite, because the fatigue, it just, all of a sudden I wasn't myself anymore. And the fatigue, in addition to the night sweats, the hot flashes, and the insomnia, was a cue that something was wrong, because it just wasn't me to be so fatigued that I felt like doing nothing other than coming to work and going home. So, and thanks so much for those who were contributing to that question. Okay. Okay. Other things, the inability to concentrate, as I've done my research, as I was going through this process, it's fascinating that the brain does not retrieve memory as we age like it did when we were younger. And so the inability to concentrate was, for me, something that was all of a sudden new. And I realized I had to change how I worked. I had to do tasks, do things that would require just a short amount of time, get those done pretty quickly, and then plan out how I was going to work on tasks that would require a longer period of time, because I just couldn't concentrate as I had when I was younger. And I even had this conversation with an individual, a man that I knew, and he and I were having this conversation, and we're the same age. And he said, do you find that you just can't stay on task like you once did? I said, yes, because men also, while the change for men midlife is not as pronounced as it is for women, since obviously our menstrual cycle stopping, men also go through a change midlife in which testosterone begins to decrease. And what is ironic, and I have to laugh about it today, is I taught the academic class on this topic. when I was younger and in the Department of Human Nutrition and Hospitality Management. And I've laughed at the irony that it wasn't really until I went through it that I understood this, not from a textbook level, but from a personal level. And I think I would be a better instructor today if I could somehow relate this to people going into the healthcare profession of what changes midlife. But both women and men do experience a change midlife. It's just, it's more pronounced for women since the menstrual cycle stops. Another thing that was odd for me, and again, had this discussion with my physician, is all of a sudden I was having GI problems. I had never had GI problems. I had always, and again, we're all women, and let's just envision that we're sitting around a lunch table having this conversation. But have always been regular. And then all of a sudden I was having GI problems, having diarrhea, and then constipation, and it wasn't making any sense. And again, I eat all the right things. What was happening? And my physician said to me, oh, well, that's part of it. And then as I began to think about it, I was like, well, she's right, because there's hormonal changes going on, and hormones regulate the GI system. So it makes sense that I would start to have some problems. Fortunately, I will tell you that has subsided. But at one point it was, oh my goodness, when is there going to be an episode? And I went out and got Metamucil and all the things that I would tell a patient to do. All of a sudden I'm like, I'm living this. So GI changes are part of it. I think that we can all agree, if you're in this phase of life, the mood changes, the mood swings, the irritability, all of a sudden reacting to things that you would not have reacted to in your 30s, that began to be something that started. It's like, okay, I have to stop and ask myself, how do I need to react in this moment? Because I'm getting irritable about things that really shouldn't matter to me. Other things, and I had an image I was trying to find to really illustrate this, but being forgetful of, we laugh about, I came into the kitchen to find something and now I can't remember what I came in here for. The forgetfulness, again, as we age, and I'm going to give you a couple of resources here towards the end of this presentation of credible resources to research, to do this research on your own. But again, the brain does not retrieve memory like it once did. And so for me, particularly making lists, keeping list going, because I couldn't trust myself to remember what I was going to pick up from the grocery store after work. So that was part of it. And I mentioned the increased risk for heart disease. Again, I can't stress that enough, because so many women take care of everyone else in their lives, but we tend to not take care of ourselves. And I've had women say that to me throughout my career, and I've certainly now seen it for myself personally, is that we worry about everybody else. And that's what a friend said to me recently. She said, you like to fix things, you like to fix people. Well, sometimes we need to fix ourselves. And so, when you're scheduling that, doctor's visit for your husband, spouse, children, make sure you schedule one for yourself. Okay. And again, take advantage of the resources that Wellness and Work Life has, because you can get those checkups. We have the faculty staff clinic here at University Medical Center. You can get checked here, but you just need to know, again, where those vital signs are and what your lab work looks like. Another thing, and then I'll go back into the chat and the Q&A, are the effects on bone health. Bone density becomes a critical issue during this phase of life, and part of that is hormonal. And also too, and I'll address this shortly, the way that we eat changes. I find for a lot of my patients, they'll say to me, I prepared meals when my children were at home, but my kids are gone. My husband and I are empty nesters, or I'm divorced and live alone now, and the way that I prepare meals, or the way that I get food, has changed significantly. And you may be missing out on some of those key nutrients that we need for bone health, making sure we're getting adequate calcium, vitamin D, et cetera. So that becomes critical. And I'll address supplements here in a second, because we tend to turn more to supplements at this age, and that can sometimes get us into some dangerous territory. So let me go into the Q&A in the chat. Okay. Have a question. Did any supplements work for you, or did you go with hormone replacement therapy? Great question. And then I'll go into to another one and then into the chat. And that brings up a great topic. Thank you very much for asking that. I will tell you, you need to be careful with hormone replacement therapy because in my discussions with one of the gynecologists that I work with, that can be a dangerous field because it's not regulated. Just like the supplement industry is not regulated, hormone replacement is not as well. The physician that I work with, my personal physician, is Dr. Caroline Day, and she very carefully monitors hormone replacement therapy. I do know that I've had friends who went to other clinics where they were prescribed hormones, and their levels were not even being checked. So have a conversation with your doctor about that. I know some physicians, because I had this discussion with one of the physicians I work with, will use oral contraceptives to regulate hormones, just as they might, for example, if a woman has polycystic ovarian syndrome, if she's younger, they'll use oral contraceptives to regulate those hormones. And so, but definitely have a conversation about that and do your research. I will say personally, I have used a transdermal hormone, but I use it just as it's directed. Okay. And then great question about managing the irritability and concentration issues. Mindfulness exercises are fantastic. The mindfulness, just kind of calming the mind, is a wonderful tool. So mindfulness resources, which I know the Office of Wellness and Work Life has offered classes on mindfulness, and they may have some recorded sessions that you can go back and view. Miranda, do you all have any of the recorded mindfulness classes that Dr. Linda Knoll taught?
Yes, I will look them up real quick and drop them in the chat for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know it's Dr. Linda Knoll is a professor in the Department of Human Nutrition and Hospitality Management, and has taught classes on mindfulness and mindful eating, actually, which is also a great tool. Let me go into the chat real quick. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Wonderful comment for someone who says she's adopted and has no medical history from family, and that's the challenge of adoption, is you don't have that history. So being on top of your current medical history and is critical to see kind of where everything is running now, since you don't have that past medical history. Okay, fantastic. Okay, and we're going to move forward. And I did tell Miranda that I think there was such a huge response to this topic. I think we had 91 register. I can go in and see how many are actually online, but 91 women registered for this. So I think it's a topic that, there's a huge response to, and I'm happy to do a future session and actually interview some of the gynecologists that I work with, as well as the endocrinologists that we have on staff at University Medical Center. Okay, so in terms of addressing those symptoms, what do we need to do? Okay, and I'm still working on this. I'm not going to say I have this down, but I'm working hard on it, is knowing limits, knowing what I can and can't do. The word no is not an easy one to come out of my mouth. But now is a time where I try not to overcommit. I know myself personally that pretty much Monday through Wednesday or Monday through Thursday, I like to go home after work. I don't like to commit to more than I need to, because I like to have some structure. When I was 30 to 35 and working at UAB, I would prep for a cooking demo at 4:30 in the morning to then go live on WBRC's Good Day Alabama, work all day, and then teach a class at night. I know that I cannot do that anymore. So I try to say no more than yes. But again, that's a work in progress, because for many of us, for professional women, we're accustomed to taking care of things, at work, taking care of the family, and so learning to where your limits are is critical. Also, I'd say self-care, and that's a term that we use, just like we use the term wellness, we use the term mindfulness. But what does self-care mean? And that's different for every person. Self-care for me personally is, I want to go home after work and I want to have dinner at a reasonable hour, and I'm trying to push it up to have dinner earlier. But that is something that's self-care for me. Self-care for me personally is also giving myself permission to maybe occasionally I pick up dinner somewhere. I pick up a prepared meal at one of the local places that we have, and I'm not trying to promote any company over another, but maybe picking up something at Gourmet Kitchen. Or today, I know that Fresh Market has rotisserie chickens for $5. That may be self-care today, is to say, today, I don't want to cook dinner. I don't have the energy to cook dinner, and I'm going to pick something up. And, and many times that can just giving yourself a little bit of grace and saying, I'm going to do what works for me in this particular moment. And knowing that this is a transition period and it will pass. I will say my energy level is very different than it was 5 years ago. And so I'm able to do a little bit more, but I still give myself permission to say, you know what? I know Fresh Market has that $5 rotisserie chicken, or they've got the little big meal for $25. I don't have to make any decisions about meal planning, at least for that one day. Okay. And so that's what I would encourage you to consider. How can you make some changes and streamline services? Is Instacart, is that going to be the thing that saves you from having to make multiple stops on the way home? Ask yourself that. It may be a few extra dollars, but is it going to give you a little bit more peace to have somebody else pick up the things that you need? And that's, again, a few less stops on your way home from work. So just ask yourself that. And I'm going to go back into the Q&A and chat. Okay, Amy asked a good question. I'm going to refer you, Amy, to the US Pharmacopoeia here in just a second about supplements. I am not personally familiar, have not done the research on that supplement that you're referring to. I am aware of it, but I'll give you the US Pharmacopoeia here in a second, which is an agency that does independent testing of supplements. Let me go into the chat. Great question. Is there anything we can do to boost our energy in a natural way? Here's the catch-22, is that getting better quality sleep is key. And that's why when I showed you that image that I did as we got started, that's the thing that I was looking for, was to boost my energy, was to try to improve not just the quantity of my sleep, so the amount of time that I stayed asleep, but also the quality. And so for me personally, I tried to do the I diffused essential oils just because I like the aromatic effect. The humidifier just put moisture in the air for me so that I wasn't as dehydrated. And I will say one thing is, ask yourself, how well hydrated are you? Particularly since 2020, since the mask, and we still have to wear these because we're a healthcare organization. I found that people were not as well hydrated because they had masks on all day. And so that became an even bigger issue. But ask yourself, how well hydrated are you? A good key is to, look at urine after you first void your bladder in the morning. Urine should be about the color of lemonade or even almost clear. And so how well hydrated you are plays into how much energy you have. And then great question, sound machines. Yes, sound machines are fantastic. You can have some that just make white noise. Others will play like waves crashing or what have you. Ask yourself if that works for you. I've got a guide to one song or melody that you can play that plays either for 10 minutes or for 10 hours. You can download it off YouTube, and I'll get to that here in just a second. That has been proven, has been scientifically tested to ease anxiety. Great comment. Your tolerance for drinking alcohol changed as well. Yeah, that changes. And one thing that my doctor said to me was that if you're tempted to have like a glass of wine or what have you, drink of choice before you go to bed, thinking it will help you sleep, but actually when alcohol is metabolized, it's being metabolized overnight. And so it starts to peak. As it's metabolized, it peaks when you're trying to sleep, and that actually stimulates you to wake up. Okay, so great comment. Thank you. Okay, and let's see. Okay, and somebody wants a repeat of the color of urination after you void in the morning or whenever your morning is. After you void that first time, later in the day, it should be the color of lemonade to almost clear. And that will tell you if you're well hydrated or not. Okay. If you do, just to let you know, if you take a multivitamin supplement, some of those vitamins, your B vitamins, actually are yellow in liquid. And so when you first urinate in the morning, if you notice it's a bright yellow color, that is those vitamins from a vitamin mineral supplement. So what you're looking for is later in the day. Okay. And you can actually download online a urination guide as to what is a healthy color for urine to be. Okay. Okay. Forward. Okay, and so here let's get into a little bit more about sleep, and then also what we can do to kind of help the gut. Okay, the Centers for Disease Control does identify sleep insufficiency, and that's not just lack of timing of sleep, that's quality sleep. Okay, so if you find that you're waking up overnight, which is again not uncommon during this phase, then that can be really inflammatory in the body. And so trying to, promote adequate quality sleep, okay, is key. So whether it's using, this is the melody I referred to, it's by Marconi Union, it's called Weightless. It's been scientifically tested to ease anxiety. Sound machines that we discussed a minute ago, based on someone's comment, sound machines may be an option, but also look at how you have your bedroom set up. And we're all guilty of this, and I still work on this, is keeping these things off, okay, or putting them to where you can't easily grab it in the middle of the night if you wake up. Okay, now you can set the visual on your phone I have it set to where at 10 p.m. from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. it goes to a dull yellow tone as opposed to the bright blue tone that it is during the day, because that blue light, okay, and some of you may even have the blue light glasses that will filter that light. That blue light interferes with your body's melatonin production. So you want to make sure as a first step, change your settings so that during your sleeping time, you don't look over and see that blue light. Okay, that's going to be key. One of your best bets is to really keep the phone out of the bedroom. But if you're like, for so many of us, we keep our phone close by either as an alarm. I have elderly parents, and so I keep my phone close by in case something were to happen, but trying to not pick it up if you happen to wake up overnight is going to be key. One thing I started to do was to try to read actual books again, not books on my phone or on an iPad, but a paper book. And so that if I did wake up overnight, I wasn't reaching for my phone. I even sold my iPad just because it was too easy to grab. So that's something to think of, is how do you have everything set up to sleep well? Is the room cool enough? And is the bed comfortable? Okay. So those are just some things to take a look at for yourself. The National Sleep Foundation has additional guides on promoting optimal sleep that you can take a look at. Okay. Other things, that gut, that microbiome, okay? You hear a lot about the microbiome, and what that is really kind of looking at the health of the gut. You can increase fermented foods, so sauerkraut, kimchi, you may want to do kombucha, for example. Just look for one that has no more than about 6 grams of sugar, okay? Those fermented foods can help improve gut health, okay? Also, you can use pre and probiotics, and I'm going to refer to the US Pharmacopoeia here in a second. But pre and probiotics, don't spend a ton of money on those. One brand, and again, I don't receive any financial benefit from saying this, but the Nature's Own brand of supplements, Nature's Own does test their products. They'll release them to the market before they test them, but they ultimately do test their products, and those are not expensive supplements. And so that's one that I typically tell my patients to look for, because probiotics can get extremely expensive, and you don't want to spend a lot of money on that. Certainly including Greek yogurt, kefir in your diet, great options to get some good bacteria in. Also some great nutrition with that extra calcium. Okay, and here's the US Pharmacopoeia. US Pharmacopoeia is an independent agency. They do independent testing of supplements. And so you can go to usp.org. You may find their logo if they've tested a product on a supplement. But, take a look there. Consumerlabs.com is another independent testing organization. Companies actually have to pay to have supplements tested. But the supplement industry, as I mentioned earlier, is not regulated. And so you want to, to take a look at what it is you're buying, because you can get into, pretty serious situations with supplements that have, toxic levels of a vitamin or mineral. And there's plenty of cases that have been out there, and we've certainly seen it in healthcare. But that's one reason I like to stick with mainstream brands such as Nature's Own, Centrum, and then look at the US Pharmacopoeia for any issues. Now, as I mentioned earlier, bone health now is a great time to not only, see kind of where bone density is, but see where your vitamin D levels are running. Most of us are inside offices during the day, so you're not getting any sun exposure or minimal. And most of your skincare products have sunscreen in them. So getting vitamin D checked, which will also, in addition to heart health, bone health, can also, vitamin D is also associated with potentially prevention of certain cancers. Okay. And then from the dietitian's perspective, here's what I like to encourage people to do, okay? And so this is me, the professional, speaking at this point, is ask yourself, what is your real schedule and ability, particularly right now, if you're in perimenopause or have hit menopause or kind of coming out of it, what is your real schedule like, and what are you able to do, okay? And that's, again, I've had to ask myself that. I pride myself on cooking dinner most nights, but again, I've had to say, you know what, we may be picking up a prepared casserole or prepared meal tonight, and that's okay, because that's where my ability is right now. And, are you somebody who likes to do food prep, or you don't? Would you prefer just to throw things together or again, pick something up? Just be honest with yourself because you can make anything work. And that's what I try to help my patients with is figure out what works for the individual. Okay. And then think about having what I call an energy saving plan B for periods of more intense fatigue. Okay. So what can you do easily? Maybe it's omelet night. Again, maybe it's picking up something. Or even as I kind of went through this process myself, I discovered places that I might normally not stop to pick up something actually had time-saving, energy-saving options for me. Even, believe it or not, even Zaxby's, you can just skip plain seasoned cooked chicken breast. I didn't realize that. You can just get those and put those into a dish. You don't even have to cook. As I mentioned, Fresh Market has $5 Thursdays, where today they will again have that $5 rotisserie chicken or a $5 12-inch thin crust pizza, which it's thin crust, so it's perfectly healthy. Okay, and so ask yourself, what is my plan B? What is my backup plan? Okay, and then think about the route that you take to and from work. For most of us who work on campus, you're taking McFarland, you're taking Lurleen Wallace Boulevard. What is along your route that where you can pick something up, okay, and make that work for you. So, just start looking around and seeing, what do I pass on a daily basis where I can pick something up if I'm just too tired, or if I just need, like, it's soup night and I stop by Nukes as I leave campus and pick something up. Okay. So think about those things. Now let me go back into the chat. Oh, yes. And great. Thank you so much, Miranda, for including that. Yes. With your UA badge, okay, with your UA badge, employees of the university receive a 10% discount at Fresh Market. So you're saving yourself the tax essentially. Just remember to take your badge in, or I've even shown my business card before. And but that's every day of the week, UA employees get a 10% discount. And great question. Somebody says, I have a hard time with larger supplement pills. Or gummies okay? Absolutely. Supplements come in a variety of forms, certainly larger pills, but your calcium supplements, if it's calcium is a salt. And so calcium pills are larger. One thing that changes as we start, as we kind of move along the life cycle, start to age, is that you may notice that you are not able to swallow as easily as you once were. I personally cannot. There's some antibiotics I can't take because they're just too large. And I tell my doctor or my colleagues who are here in the faculty staff clinic at University Medical Center, I can't take Augmentin because the pill's too large. So you're going to have to give me a different antibiotic that I can swallow. So gummies, you may have to take more than one pill a day. Liquid vitamin mineral supplements, you may have to take multiple doses because there's just not as much packed in, but those are perfectly fine. Okay, let me go back up in the chat. Okay, and great, thank you so much, Miranda. The Sleep More, Stress Less program begins May 12th, and the sleep experts, Dr. Pat Carter and Dr. Josh, they're going to be talking about getting a better night's sleep. I know that one has been hugely popular in the past. Okay. Oh, and thank you, Tanya, very much. I failed to mention sleep apnea. Sleep apnea, not uncommon. It can be, sleep apnea occurs when you're asleep, you may not even realize you do it. But if you've ever had anybody tell you you snore significantly, or you've had somebody in the house say, my gosh, I could hear you from the other room, definitely get checked for sleep apnea. It can happen just due to kind of physical makeup of the palate, or if when we gain weight, if there's excess tissue, excess flesh pushing on the back of the throat, it can cause, what happens is the brain wakes up. Even though you may not realize you're awake, the brain wakes up. And so someone gets out of that REM sleep, that deep sleep, that restful sleep. And so getting checked for sleep apnea, if you have any concerns, or again, if somebody in the household has told you you snore significantly, that's going to be critical. When people have been treated for sleep apnea with a CPAP device, which has to be fitted, and if you lose or gain a significant amount of weight, it does have to be refit. But it actually enables you to get oxygen going to the brain throughout the night. And so you're going to wake up far more well-rested and feeling a lot better. So again, and I've had people, I've asked women before and men, but women, sometimes if they live alone, I'll say, record yourself while you're sleeping and listen to see if you're snoring significantly. If you wake up with a headache, that's going to be another key in addition to the snoring that you could have sleep apnea. Nature's Own, the question came up, is the Nature's Own supplement line. That is the one that is typically, it's in a yellow bottle, or it's got a yellow label on a brown bottle. And it's different from Nature's Bounty. So yeah, great question. But it's a real common supplement line. Okay, and then here's some resources for you. Again, increase foods for bone health and heart health. So again, that calcium, vitamin D, potassium that we naturally get. We naturally get potassium from your produce. Doesn't have to be fresh produce. Frozen, that's not packed in a syrup or a sauce, is fantastic. And frozen produce is already cut up. You don't have to do any of the work. And so potassium helps to lower blood pressure, and calcium actually offsets the effect of sodium in the diet. And so you not only get the benefit of bone health with those nutrients, but it also helps heart health. Okay. Watch any late night eating, particularly if you are an empty nester at this stage of life, or I'll have, women will say, well, I kind of find myself grazing all night. The foods you tend to crave in the evening tend to be higher calorie, higher fat, because we're physically, mentally tired at the end of the day. And so the foods that you crave at 8 p.m. are likely different than the ones you crave at 8 a.m. Okay. And then try to plan meals and snacks. And again, you may plan to pick up something, but be intentional with your choices, so that way that grazing doesn't happen as often. With my younger patients, I have found that when women are younger, they may be eating off their child's plate, whatever their child doesn't finish. But as we're older, you're not planning, or you may find yourself not planning structured meals, the grazing can be more common. Okay. And you definitely want to increase protein. We want to preserve lean body mass as we age, so that, when we wear those sleeveless shirts, that our arms look the way we want them to. Also increasing protein and preserving lean body mass is going to keep us stronger and less likely to fall as we age. So definitely increasing protein content and including that at meals and snacks. And these are two resources from individuals in my profession who are credible resources. These both came out. The one on your left, the Food and Fitness After 50, came out from my professional association, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And then the Menopause Diet Plan, it's not really a diet, because I'm a non-diet dietitian, but it more just describes what's happening as those hormones are changing and what some strategies are. And the Menopause Diet Plan, those two authors also have a podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and you can follow them on there and get clips from their the advice they share and the scientific evidence to back it up. But both of those I would recommend. And as we get to these last couple of minutes, let me go back into the chat real quick. And thank you for 60 folks are still with us, and I really appreciate it. Yes, I'm happy to, Beretta, I'm happy to talk about this. Again, when I was going through it, I couldn't find any information on what was happening. I just knew that menopause happened. I didn't know that perimenopause was actually the stage leading up to it. You can find some great resources. Cleveland Clinic has some wonderful resources on perimenopause. But, I remember asking my own mother, when did you go through menopause? I remember you saying it was early, but when was it? And she just kind of dismissed it. And I think it's so important to talk about because, again, we talk about puberty, we talk about fertility, infertility, pregnancy, but we don't talk about this. And I am happy to have a conversation, whether it's via webinar like this, or if you just want to call me up and I'll meet you for lunch, because I found for myself, I felt like, and I don't mind saying this, but I felt like I wasn't me anymore and I wanted to be me again. And fortunately, as I said, a year ago, when I got the all clear that my hormones were there, I'm done. It was one of the best days of my life to say that this period in my life is over. Okay. It may be nature made. Nature made. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Catherine. That is correct. Nature made. Nature made. But again, I'm happy to entertain any questions. Feel free to email me. I'm at shenson@ua.edu. That's SHENSON@ua.edu. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, I'm speaking really today as an individual, to a degree as the professional, but I'm happy to help anyone because, I was kind of at a loss when all this started. But the good news is you get to the other side of it, and it's great to know that that phase is over. So thank you all so much for being here.